Welcome back to Smike with Rapid Quants. It's July 24th, 2022. Let's do a market update. And Bitcoin is on the move. It finally completed its short campaign here with Gravitas. We've been short since April 27th, actually, quite a long time. And that campaign has finally concluded and flipped for a long position. I do like this formation right now here. We've had this, if you look since November, the highs, we've got this sequential waterfall here, waterfall formation, right? So we have this cascading waterfall formation here. So accumulates, you think it's going to escape higher, and then for some reason it just falls apart, slices through net line sell levels, tries to hold the line, falls apart, and then just gives it up. The price has been paid, and then the next phase continues in a smaller formation here. See that again? Same thing. Spike low, sideways, trying to escape, unable to do so. Fortunately, throughout all this, Gravitas kept us in a short position, and then it falls apart. And again, here finally now we have a buy signal because the comments have finally crossed. And we have this net line buy level breach. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here so that you see the context. Speaking of which, we've produced quite a bit here on the bottom, which is very positive because always you have to think forward, right? The more context we produce, the more price context we have further on the line. Let's say if we advance to the upside here and then fall back, the more we've produced on here, the better for us because we have more a price cluster that will act potentially, not reliably, but not 100%, but has an opportunity to produce a floor for us, right? And so that context will in the future be very, very important. And that's always how you have to think. You have to think more ahead of the curve, right? Not just what happens in the next 2 days, week, or maybe even the next 2 or 3 weeks. You have to think a month, 2 months ahead because what's very much possible, think about it, macroeconomically, or in terms of the supply chain, or the war, right? Or, well, winter's coming at some point, we're in July, right? So, the elections in the US, right? Midterm elections. I mean, we've got a lot of volatility triggers that will affect the markets, especially in equities. And so the fat lady hasn't sung there yet, right? And so we might see another wipeout in equities, maybe a big one. Will that affect the crypto sector? Possible. If you think back around here, we had quite a high correlation with equities, with both the NASDAQ and the SPX. I did some statistics on it, if you remember, right? And I posted them in the blog. And, well, that correlation has diminished over the last few weeks, but we've had a lot more upside in equities recently than we had in the crypto sector. So I wonder what happens if the equity sector completely falls apart, potentially in fall. Is this going to drag the crypto sector back down? Well, it's a distinct possibility. And again, so the more context down here at this current time, the more it will serve us later when it comes to establishing price clusters where we say, okay, well, it's really not worth it to hold through that. Once this cluster has been breached, we need to exit and we need to go short again, right? Or at least go into cash. So that's kind of my level of thinking, right? Think ahead. And comparing this with Ethereum, of course, has been a lot more volatile. It always is. And if you follow along the signal here, it's been short since here, then it exited here again with profits, bought back, right? And then was flat for a while and then basically sold here and has been short since actually just 3 days ago. So it held through all this. It didn't get a long signal until here. It's actually still flat. So we probably will get a long signal if it reaches this net line buy level at 16.31 and 32 cents. So that's the current net line buy level. So that spike high right here, right? If it breaches it, I think we're off to the races potentially. Usually what I like to see is a retest, as I said, right? I'd like to see more context here because normally when I see price retrace, hold the line, and then bounce back and breach this first advance, that's usually a golden buying opportunity. I didn't really like this quick punch higher. It looks very suspicious to me. Now, whether or not I like it or not really is it's not really that important, right? It's irrelevant. What matters is what price does. But per my experience, it's easier to trade and it's easier to basically take on a contrarian, because we're still in a downtrend officially, right? So a contrarian position or a breakout entry, if you have more context, right? A breakout entry meaning that we have context before it's passing a particular inflection point, long or short, and then really takes off really quickly, right? So that's kind of a breakout entry. And this is the possibility that we might see that, but I prefer what we see in Bitcoin right now. I think it looks healthier, and unfortunately Bitcoin is usually a little bit more representative of what happens in the rest of the sector. So here, if you compare, right, we have some advance, but it's a little bit slower, and it's already coming back, and it's doing a retest, and all this looks a lot healthier to me. And also, if it breaches this neckline buy level, that would be a great entry to get into, right? Great long entry, and I think it would have a high probability of succeeding, or potentially, even if we get kicked out again, at least get us back out with some profits, or get us out at break even, which would be great. Clearly, down here, if it breaches through, what is that, the 20,000 mark, then things might get ugly again. And that's possible, right? It might actually work its way higher and then fall back like it did before here, right? Especially here, right? And it might fall back and just fizzle away, and then just fall back, and we see more downside. All that stuff is possible. That's why I'd like to see a little bit more context. So yeah, that's where we are at this point. We are long in Bitcoin, which is interesting given that Ethereum was a stronger one, right? And we're actually flat here in Gravitas, but I feel that Bitcoin is really the one to follow. We're flat in Ethereum, we're long in Bitcoin. I like the Bitcoin formation better. Ethereum is a little bit ahead of the curve in my opinion, but it does often lead higher. So we'll see what happens. If we also see a buy signal and a continuation higher, well, then no reason to argue, right? And that's just basically what it is. Then we do get the momentum effect, and it advances higher, and we might find ourselves very quickly up here. That's very much possible. That's the next cluster of resistance that we would have to overcome. Actually, the very first one is right here. I shouldn't even be looking at this yet. So the very first cluster, in fact, is around 2200 here on Ethereum, all the way down to like, what is that, 18, it's very small, 1828 or something. So yeah, here, that has to overcome first. So if it's able to do that, right, this breach here, and overcome all this, we might see a quick punch higher. And similar here on Bitcoin, similar situation, needs to overcome all this first, get to 30,000. That would be great, 30,000 again, right? And before we can even think about going back to here, the 40,000 cluster. So we quite a lot of work ahead of us, but well, it's a good start. So positive news. Let's keep our fingers crossed. That's it for me today. Please upvote the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.